Survivor here, and today we're going to talk about 10 things that will happen immediately or within the first 72 hours after a grid down type of event. We're talking about any type of event that could lead to a grid down situation that would cause the loss of power throughout urban areas, rural areas, basically nationwide. We're going to talk about the effects we'll see after this type of event. Remember, the best defense you can have for an event like this is to plan ahead. Without planning ahead and without the correct preparations, then surviving an event like this is going to be extremely difficult. The more knowledge you have, the more skills you have, the more gear that you have will enable or will increase your chances of survival in a grid down type of event. Now, we know that this type of event is going to be completely different for those living in, say, a rural area as opposed to those in a very large urban metropolis type of area. So we're looking at basically urban scenarios here. Even though the effect will be nationwide, it won't be felt, the impact won't be as dramatic in some of these rural areas as it will be in the urban areas. So we're going to focus on those. So when this event first occurs, then one of the biggest problems is going to be mass confusion. People are not going to start panicking immediately, and that's going to be because they don't realize what's happened. We're going to believe it's just a small power outage, unless it's an event that we see coming. And a lot of people are going to react as if things are normal. They're going to try to stay at work. They're going to stay in their homes. They're going to continue doing normal things, at least for the first little bit of this event. But when this event occurs, one of the major things, the first impacts that will be felt is the loss of communications. When the grid goes down, then so do cell phone towers. I realize that your cell phone itself may still hold a charge, but if the cell phone towers that relay those signals are not functional, then it's going to drop those calls and you're going to lose all ability to communicate with anyone but those immediately around you. And this is going to be one of the most difficult aspects to overcome or to get past in the beginning if you don't have a plan or plan ahead of time for this. That's why planning for communications after a grid down event is one of the most important things that we can do. Number two, when the grid does go down and we lose communications, then one of the most valuable services that we take for granted on a daily basis, at least in industrialized nations, are the 911 or emergency services. They get used more than most people realize. And with these services not in place, then that means any accidents, any injuries, anything that goes wrong at all that these types of services would respond to, they'll not be able to respond. Now, they do have backup generators and a lot of their devices are battery powered, so I don't believe in the first few hours we're going to see a total collapse of all of police structure, medical infrastructure. This is going to continue working for a little while because of backup generators and because of handheld devices, battery power, battery backups, things like that. They will attempt to uphold law and order. They will attempt to continue providing emergency services at first, but the situation is going to be so catastrophic that they're going to be completely overwhelmed. Now, within 72 hours, we could expect this to fail completely. Within 72 hours, the majority of the hospitals will be out of supplies. They'll either have been robbed, looted, or used them all up. Emergency service employees will be home with their families if they can be, or they may even be victims to the event itself because they will be on the front lines of these events. So after 72 hours, then we can't expect for any help to be coming other than those we know personally and other than helping ourselves. And the best way to help yourself is to prepare ahead of time. Number three, this is going to happen almost as soon as the event occurs, or probably simultaneously along with the event. But this is going to be the failure of all of the traffic lights, all of the traffic devices that help traffic flow in larger areas. And this may not seem so traumatic at first, but what this is going to do is cause a gridlock everywhere. This is going to cause a gridlock in the urban areas especially, but even in the rural areas, it's going to make transportation difficult. And then we have to factor in the effects or impacts that when this does occur and cars are moving at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour down an interstate or approaching an intersection at 45 or 50 miles an hour and that traffic light fails and no one knows what to do, there are going to be a lot of initial wrecks to begin with, which is going to tie up emergency services that can get to these areas. And we know emergency services aren't going to be around for long, so they're going to attempt to react to all of this, although they may not be able to because of the gridlock caused by the traffic light failures throughout the entire urban areas. So this is something that's going to lock down the major highways, the major routes that we use to get out of cities, and we have to really plan for this ahead of time by planning alternate routes that take us through areas that do not rely on, traffic direction devices, on back roads, on smaller roads. The areas and ways that we can evacuate the city that does not require us to get on major interstates, major throughways, freeways, and things such as that. This is going to be a huge impact on the initial stages. When the grid goes down and communications go down along with it, everyone's going to see this. And it's not only the people who are trying to just keep themselves safe that are going to see this impact or see this effect immediately, but it's those that are wanting to take advantage of it. Those that will take advantage in a normal situation are definitely going to take advantage of a grid down, lack of communication situation. So I would expect immediately to see a rise in crime. And this is going to begin with smaller personal crimes, physical assaults, people getting robbed, probably even worse. And it's going to escalate from there, because as communication does fail over the first 72 hours and the battery backup devices and the generators run out of gas, then emergency services is going to completely fail. So we will have nothing to rely on other than ourselves or our group at this point in time. And this is something we really have to prepare for. And this boils down to two things: self-defense skills and your physical conditioning. And not everyone's going to have those skills, but it is something you have to take into account. This is where personal protection, the use of other means, can come into play. And I'm talking firearms, blades. You're going to want to keep a weapon nearby. You're going to want to keep a weapon on you, handy at all times. But this is going to escalate with time. It's going to begin with smaller scale crimes that occur right at the beginning of this type of event, and it's going to simply escalate into more of a looting phase, and then it's going to escalate into full-blown riots probably by the first night of the event. So if you can't get out of the city very quickly, then you need to contemplate places you can go that you feel would be safe, depending on the location you live in. This is something you have to plan for, because when this stage of the event begins, there's no one there to stop this other than you. Crime is going to increase steadily at a very rapid pace throughout the first 72 hours of this event, until we are completely in a lawless society after probably 24 to 72 hours. If the last section does come to fruition and crime and riots are dominating the streets, making life perilous and dangerous to those simply trying to traverse the area, then the government, if it's still functional, will most likely step in and declare some type of martial law restrictions. It will probably begin with a simple curfew, but then it will escalate to gun confiscation and full-out martial law. And this type of situation is going to basically trap people in their homes, not being able to leave their homes and walk the streets during certain hours. And the government's going to be the one to attempt to take total control of the situation. And they're going to do this by simply enacting martial law and keeping us prisoners in our own homes. It's highly probable that the government will attempt to enact martial law in a situation like this, although the logistics of it will be very complicated with a grid down situation. So this could definitely be a dangerous situation, because with martial law, this is the type of event that you simply can't bug out from, because you're trapped in the city under the martial law type of restrictions. So this is something that's a definite possibility, and it will place a lot of undue restrictions on people just trying to survive. The whole purpose of it would be to restrict criminal movement, but it's going to affect everybody, especially when the gun confiscation begins and they start attempting to take people's firearms to make the area safer, as they say, when in reality all this is going to do is put us as individuals in much, much more danger. Number 6, when the event first occurs, another thing that's going to go down that we may not, really think much about is cash registers, our debit card machines at the store. I'm not going to be able to run into a store and buy a bunch of bottled water with my debit card because there's no power. So if you don't have any cash or barter supplies or a stockpile or a location, a bug out location to go to with the supplies you need, then it's going to be extremely difficult from the first minute of the event. If you are the type of person that keeps a bare pantry, a bare refrigerator, what are you going to do when you can't make that purchase at this point? Cash is only going to be good immediately after the event. After that, people are not even going to open the stores anymore, and the only bartering they're going to do is for other goods and supplies. And if they see any cash, they're probably just going to attempt to rob you to take that cash. So all purchases will boil down to cash or barter shortly after the event occurs. So for all those that keep their money tied up, all of their money tied up in the stock markets and investments and in things such as that are electronically stored, or data that you have to have access to a machine, a computer, to get this type of these types of funds, then as soon as the grid goes down, you have nothing at that point. So it's always a good idea, especially if you do have the money, to put some back and have some cash on hand, at least enough to buy your way out of town if necessary, to get to a safer location. Number 7. Now the time frame of number 7 occurring is not necessarily immediately. It will be felt immediately in some general areas, but in other areas, then this will not be as quickly felt. And that's the loss of water, of running water. In some areas, as soon as the grid goes down, you're going to lose all water pressure because there's so much of a supply. There's so much of a demand on it at that point. And in those highly or densely populated areas, you're going to lose water pressure immediately. Other places that are less densely populated and have a larger area that they maybe service with water towers and things such as that, you're going to maintain a water supply for a little while, but you could probably safely expect all water to be gone within 72 hours. But this is an important aspect to take into account. Don't take for granted that just because my water's still running right now, when the grid is down, it's going to be running tomorrow, because it's probably not. Which makes water storage such an important aspect to this, or having a bug out location with an adequate water source and having the means to get there. Number 8 sort of goes along with number 7. This is the loss of gasoline and natural gas. A lot of people rely on natural gas for heating, cooking, things like that. These types of systems are set up very differently in different areas. And that will mean that some areas will immediately lose their gas supply when the grid goes down, while other areas will remain active. The supply will remain active. So this is going to be different for different people in different parts of the country. So this is something we're going to have to take into account, is the loss of that natural gas, or the presence of that natural gas when we're attempting to get out of town, because this can make for a dangerous situation, especially around the refineries and the facilities that produce these types of products. Now when it comes to gasoline pumps are once again electronically or electrically controlled. So when the grid goes down, then there's no pumping gasoline, and this is going to in turn result in riots at gas stations in general, because as people realize that the power's not coming back on, then they're going to attempt to take that gas forcefully from the tanks that store it below each of the gas stations that you go to. So this is going to be a dangerous place to approach. We know that when the grid goes down, we will not be able to pump gasoline, so we don't want to approach one of these places unless we're sure that we can take that gasoline. And what I mean is access the gasoline through manual pumping means or methods such as that. Keep in mind that this is going to stop immediately. There's going to be no more deliveries. There's going to be no more production. There's going to be no more gasoline except what's in the tanks right now. So this is another aspect that we need to prepare for. Even if we do have a vehicle, we may not have the gasoline to get us to where we need to go. Once again, this brings up the need for planning before the event. Number 9. Number 9 is the loss of production. Now, people may not think this is a big effect at first. You're like, okay, so the plants shut down, the grid goes down, all of the plants, all of the manufacturing facilities, they stop producing goods. That's no big deal, but that is a big deal, because that's where they process the foods, and that's where they process the things we drink for the most part. That's where they process everything that we use on a daily basis, and everything that we have used and relied on throughout the years is produced in factories of some type. This is going to be important, not immediately, not the first moment of the event, other than people being trapped in some of these locations. But this is really going to impact us within or at the 72-hour mark, because by the time the 72-hour mark hits, then all the stores will have been looted and everything's going to be gone. Nothing is being produced, so there's nothing that can be delivered. And even if it was being produced, you can't deliver it because of the traffic jams on the highways caused by the grid down event. So there's nothing else coming to take the place of what's there right now. And that's an important reason to stock what you can if you're going to stay in your location. And if you're going out to a bug out location, then stock what you can there and make sure it's safe. So when the infrastructure goes down, this just-in-time delivery will stop that first day. Although it'll be about the second or third day when the stores are empty that we really feel the impact of this. Number 10 is the aftermath. And the aftermath of this event after 72 hours, and this is going to lead to a complete change of the environment, of the area we live, I should say. You're going to see part of the cities are going to be burnt, part are going to be collapsed. There's going to be violence, there's going to be gangs, there's going to be fighting. This is not a place you want to be. You don't want to be in an area that has 1 million people in 10 square miles or 5 square miles, and there are no resources. Everyone's coming after you, they're coming after each other. This is not a place that we want to be, and it's going to be a very dangerous place. Now, not everyone's going to be able to get out of the cities, and they're going to have to deal with this aftermath, and that's going to be a very difficult situation for those. And also, we have to look at the impact of the people leaving the cities and that do make it to the rural areas. In the rural areas, things are more spread out, so people from the cities will have a tendency to try to fill in these gaps between the homes that are here. And that's going to cause a lot of discord between the people that are there and the people that are just trying to survive and get there. And this is in itself is going to cause rivalries, it's going to cause violence, it's going to cause a lot of things, because not everybody coming is just coming to pitch a tent and say, you know, I need a place to stay for a little while until we can develop something. But some people will be coming because they know that the people in the rural areas are not as impacted in the initial stages as those in the urban areas. So all areas will be dangerous. Just because I live in a small town like I do does not mean I'll be safe, especially after the first 72 hours. The first 72 in an urban area will be the most dangerous in the initial part of this type of event. The first 72 in a rural area will not be as dangerous. It'll be after the first 72, when the people from the larger cities are leaving and are migrating to the rural areas. This is when we see that impact. And these are the type of things that we do have to take into account for a grid down event. There's so much more that's going to happen than we could ever talk about in one video. We'd be here for days just talking about the different things that would fail. Well, those were some of the things that we could expect immediately after a grid down type of event. It's going to impact everyone, and this is something that we have to truly plan for, because this is one of the most likely scenarios. With the infrastructure of the United States, it's getting very old at this point in time, just the same as a lot of it is in Europe too. So this is something that can impact the entire world, and it's something that very well may do so one day. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. That's it for now. Thanks a lot for watching. Serious Survivor, out.